Jesus freak here, and I'd been, I guess, thinking about some things recently. When I was young, I went to a small church that was out in the middle of nowhere. And I guess it was the epitome of where two or three are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them. And sometimes two or three was the extent of the congregation. My uncles, my dad's two younger brothers, were at the time they would serve as substitute preachers when a pastor in the area was out of town or unable to preach. And later they both took over the church. Anyway, my family was in charge of a lot of the functions that went on there. Basically, it was our church. It wasn't much, it was something. Anyway, I still find myself more comfortable in smaller churches that have more traditional types of services. And I guess part of that's because that's what I grew up with. Um, but something seems kind of off anytime I go in a really big church or a church that, has a modern, you know, trying to appeal to the younger ones um, vibe, I guess you could say. And if you want my opinion, that vibe vibe appeals more to people older than me than it does to people my age and younger. I mean, we can sniff out a fake a mile away, and all that stuff is, it just doesn't feel right. It feels like, we're trying to appeal to the people. That's not what church is supposed to be about. We're supposed to be appealing to God. We're supposed to be there to worship God, not to be entertained. And this is why I tend to prefer a smaller, old-fashioned church to a larger or fancier or more modern or seeker sensitive, because it just doesn't feel right. And I don't, I mean, maybe they're honest about it at the higher levels, and maybe they're not. But I tend to be like, is this really worshiping God in spirit and in truth? Now, understand, this is my opinion. And I know everyone has their own opinion about what's proper worship. And that's one of the reasons there's so many splinter sects out there. Because we can't make up our rabbit minds. I happen to like the old hymns. And maybe some not so old ones. I mean, I'll admit that one of my favorite ones is a 21st century hymn. In Christ Alone is probably one of my newer favorites. And I've said, my favorite is Be Thou My Vision, old Irish hymn that got translated about 100 years ago. It's not particularly that old an introduction to the English language. And I mean, and of course, my uncle always liked Old Rugged Cross. Me, I say, I don't like Old Rugged Cross as a hymn. As a song, sure, it's a nice song. But as a hymn, it's terrible. That's just my opinion. But it's always been, my preference of hymns has always been, the kind of stuff that Charles Wesley or Isaac Watts, Martin Luther, James Montgomery, John Newton, William Cooper, people like this would write. Those are the hymns that I grew up with. And I find that they're a lot stronger than a lot of the hymns of today. I mean, I'll admit, there's people out there, Keith Getty, Brian Wren, there's a few of them out there that can still write a good hymn. It's rare. It's rare. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It absolutely still does. And I'm not, entirely, arguing from a purpose of, it's new, therefore it bites. I actually like some of these new ones. But these hymns are in the old style. I collect hymnals for a reason. I like that kind. I like to listen to that kind of stuff. I like to sing that kind of stuff. I know I can't. I'm a terrible singer. Can't carry a tune in a wet paper bag. But it's always been my preference. Anyway, guess it's a bit of a rant, but I had to say it. Jesus freak out.